one, go. You're listening to The Kyle Chambers Show.
And welcome to The Kyle Chambers Show. My name is Kyle Chambers, and today I have Jason Rejc. He has been a science teacher for over 23 years, and he is currently at the Paris District High School teaching physics and science. Thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me, Kyle.
What was it like to study at Memorial University of Newfoundland and the Western University of Ontario?
Being at university the first time was kind of a weird experience because you're now doing things in a program you like, doing courses you really want to take, and you're in a more adult environment, for lack of a better word, because other people want to be there as well, and there's no one chasing you down for stuff. So it's very much get your work done or else. And there's no one there to bother you. And what I liked about Western in particular was that it felt like a self-contained little city. And if you've ever been there, you might see what I mean, because they have everything there on site. They even have places for entertainment and things there. And you're just kind of sitting on the edge of town, and it was this great little confined place that looked like what you thought a university would be. Newfoundland was interesting going there from Memorial University because it was a completely different province, a completely different way of life and doing things. So that was a bit of a different culture there, and seeing what it was like for that. What drew me to that place was the fact that their education program, which is what I went there for, had it done in a different way than they did here. Here at the time when you did your education program, you'd being, put into a placement for a few days, maybe a week at most. There, they did an entire term. So you'd be in a school for 13 weeks, nonstop, that's your class, figure it out. Versus here, which was you'd be in school for maybe a week at most. It's more about just survive the week and move on. So there you had to figure out, can you do it or not? And I really loved the idea of how they did the program there.
Do you find that having the more long-term placement helped you in your career to advance?
Oh, absolutely. Because at that point, I had to not just survive a couple of days. I had to plan out entire units. That was the thing I did for the first time ever. And then being able to teach it, make sure I'm teaching it effectively, coming up with all the evaluations, everything like that. And you had the entire term. Like, it's a good chunk of the year that you're there for. So I think that really helped me prepare for being a teacher, which is why I was attracted to that. Because if you can make it through that, you should be able to make it as a teacher. If you're just surviving a couple of days, you may not make it.
Especially with cultures also evolving, things evolving, the world of science evolving, you always have to be kind of on your toes and do what's best for the students as well.
Oh, absolutely. Completely. And they're being very different. I had to try to adapt things to what they're used to being, the way they're used to doing things. And completely different curriculum expectations as well from here.
What inspired you to get into the science field?
I've always been kind of attracted to different forms of science. At first, it was more about computer programming, but that was also because computer programming was the big new thing in the 1980s, where a lot of people were going into it. But that was when I was in elementary school. As I got into high school, I felt more attracted to physics and astronomy, especially because I had these chances to go outside cities and towns. I got to see the sky, and just seeing how beautiful it was, all those different things up there, the different patterns that they would make, I was really attracted to it. So I was determined that was something I wanted to do and go and study at university. So that's how I ended up pursuing that.
It's really good. And there's people that like Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example. He's been on several podcasts. He's one of the first people, in my opinion, of kind of this generation, even the last one, to really bring that to life for people who are not into as much of science, but really enjoy the astronomy side of it, to bring it down to people who don't know much about their level to be able to enjoy it as well, which I think is awesome.
Oh, completely. There have been others in the past, but the difference with him right now is we have the internet, we have YouTube, we have different streaming platforms, you have podcasts. Things like that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. So it gives these communicators like himself much easier access to the wider public. In the past, we had a few big names that would come out and do things on shows once in a while, but that was the extent of their reach. There was no other ways of reaching the people. So it's given a chance for science communicators to go out there and spread the idea and wonder of science that we just couldn't do before.
You spent several years at Hagerville Secondary School teaching there, and I was one of your students back in the day. What was it like for you to be able to teach there, and how has it shaped your career to this point?
One of the big things I think being there helped me with was the fact that it's a culturally diverse school with a very large Native population there. So I had to get used to the idea of different cultures in the classroom. While during my education program, it was a very not necessarily multicultural place. And a lot of schools in the province here still aren't very multicultural for different reasons, especially the more rural areas. But Hagersville had a very multicultural school because of that. So adjusting to being able to teach to everybody in the room instead of a generic curriculum that's put out there. So adapt things to the local people, for something like science, for instance, we do things like the food chain and food webs. I would try to include things that are local to the area that affect everybody. So there's some connections to everybody in the area to what they see in their everyday life. So it has some connection to them and their cultural upbringing versus there's this and then this and then this. I think that was a big help and a big adjustment to being a good teacher that way.
Yes, I do remember watching videos of if humans were to just not exist, what would happen to the rest of the world and how the rest of the world would evolve. Like videos, educational material that are just outside of the periodic table and basically what's on the curriculum is important because it helps your students enjoy the curriculum, and then you enjoy it more yourself because you're evolving and expanding your knowledge with your students alongside you.
Oh, completely. And I like things like that are kind of fun and entertaining because it's a bigger perspective on things. And once we had the ability to be able to show videos like that more easily in the classroom, pick and choose different things to show. It gives you different ideas and different things you couldn't do before. All you had was an overhead projector and maybe a VCR. That was not as much fun.
I remember as a kid, back when I was about grade 3, 4, 5, and 6, when they did have the old overhead projectors, and it was very different than when people got whiteboards and started using actual video, and you can actually connect the whiteboard to have it like a smart board. It really changed the game because you didn't need to have the old white sheets anymore. You could show videos in a much easier and more interactive way.
Oh, completely. That's what I loved about those things so much.
What's it like for you being at Paris District High School the last couple of years?
It's been a little different because, again, I went from a school that was a little bit more culturally diverse to a school that was starting to become like that because there's a lot of growth going on in Paris right now in the community. And a lot of people from the GTA area, Greater Toronto area, have been moving out towards Paris area to try and find cheaper places to live because the homes are a little cheaper. So as a result, we're getting a lot more people coming out there that are not the normal people the schools had in the past 20 years. So seeing that kind of change going on is kind of neat. And they've kind of got the opposite problem that we had at Hagersville, where at Hagersville Secondary School, our population was declining a little bit at the time. And that's how I ended up moving to Paris because of that. There they got the opposite problem where they're growing rapidly and they're having trouble fitting everybody into the building right now. There's something wrong with the school. We need to try and get more room or we need more people. Either or, it's about the students, how many we have. It makes it kind of challenging that way. But I'm enjoying it a lot.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a science teacher?
The big thing is understand what you're getting yourself into. That's the most important thing because you're going to do different things like try tutoring people in your school. If you have a knack for science or it's any other subject area at all, try tutoring some of the people because that's kind of like teaching or the beginning stages of it. And, if you're still in high school or something like that, do a co-op. See if you can get placed into a school where you can try and do some of that. We even had it when we were at Hagersville. We had some student co-ops that were in the building, and they would try doing a little bit of teaching here and there under the guise of teacher. Not like now I was in my education program, but they would still do little things here and there, help out, stuff like that. Try those kinds of things. See what you like. And the other thing is patience is so important. If you are not a patient person, you're going to have some trouble trying to teach because you can't be exactly losing your cool in the middle of class because you've lost your patience on something. So being patient, understanding, what's a battle you want to fight versus something, just let it go. And understanding that difference and when to do that is really important. So getting things like tutoring or co-ops helps you along that path to see, do you have some of those skills you need for doing that kind of stuff? In terms of getting into science teaching in particular, be open to all areas of science, not just the ones you are presently trying to take. So for me, my background is physics and astronomy, but Now, I'm a science teacher. I make sure I understand all stuff from biology and chemistry as much as possible. Also, because I like to encourage people to ask questions, because that's how you make sure, first off, they're paying attention, but also because it helps spark their interest in science a little bit more. So you need a bit more of a background in all areas of science to become a science teacher. So don't just focus on one or two areas. Be open to all different types of science that's out there and learn some basics of those things, because that will help you a lot when you're being a science teacher when they ask you random questions out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's good. You need to be really well-rounded in different parts of the industry you're going in. My coach, my karate coach rather, she went to University of Tampa for marine biology. She was going to become a marine biologist and was set on that, but she started to tutor in the school, was one of the heads of the tutoring committee. Then she did Special Olympics in Tampa, and she did back in her home in Chicago. She did some teaching for karate. So she learned through her experiences. That teaching kind of just organically came to her. So she ended up becoming a teacher. Now she's a teacher in Tennessee in the science field. So it's really good. Also, some people can just find their way and it naturally just comes to them, which is awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, even if you've gone to university to do one thing, you may end up being diverted onto a different path altogether or something tangential to it and end up doing that instead, because that's your first chance to try things you're interested in. And you may find out, not as much for you, or that this idea over here is far more interesting. I want to go do that instead. So that's how a lot of people end up diverting off to different areas once you're in university, because whatever skills you get in anything when you're in university or college, doesn't matter which, as long as the skills you're picking up along the way, you're going to use those in other areas. And you're not always aware what those areas are going to be until you end up in a situation where, hey, I can do this too. This sounds like fun.
How do you stay updated on the advancements in the science field as a teacher?
For me, well, one of the basic things, which is very low tech, is I do have a couple of magazine subscriptions to like Scientific American, Astronomy, and such. I read those all the time. But I also follow various science communicators online as well. So I can get information coming out that's brand new information, new studies, things like that, that helps keep me up to date. So some personalities I follow on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, things like that, and they'll mention different big stories that have come out recently that are very interesting. So I can keep myself up to date on those things, and I can bring that information into the classroom as well. Because while a lot of science doesn't necessarily change basic information, it's the extra information that's connected to it. Like when I'm teaching science, I'll talk about this certain basic thing, and then while you're writing it down or afterwards, I'll expand on it. It's not connected to what we're learning, but just kind of like, then there's this going on over here as well you should be aware of. It's really kind of neat, this kind of discovery they got. I keep myself up to date by doing those kinds of things, mainly because I just love learning science. So I never stop learning it.
And it also shows the passion for the fact you still have your passion for it. And then if you have things that are not in the curriculum, because if a curriculum stays the same or similar every year, you have something that's current and up to date that people have already maybe known about through social media or TikTok or whatnot, that you can expand on and grow on to them and tell them about as well.
Exactly. It's that kind of stuff that helps keep me informed and shows my passion in the classroom, and hopefully sparks a little interest in the students as well, that, they will start thinking more about what they're doing at the same time.
Thank you for joining the show today.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.